world outside is always too loud. Conversations, expectations, demands, they all collide, pulling you in every direction. As an introvert, you crave stillness, but the noise doesn't stop. You feel swallowed by it, struggling to find your footing. Yet, hidden in the silence within, there is strength. The ancient Stoics, hardened by hardship, knew how to weather storms far worse than this, not by fighting the chaos, but by learning to stand tall within it. Stoicism is more than just enduring. For the introvert, it's a way to thrive. The world may be loud, but your mind can remain unshaken. Let's begin. So our first lesson is, master the art of invisible resistance. The room fills with voices, too many, too fast. You feel it creeping in, that rising discomfort as the world demands your attention. People speak, expecting you to respond, but each word drains your energy. How do you survive this constant onslaught without losing yourself? The answer lies in an art that few understand. Invisible resistance. You don't have to retreat physically. You don't need to match their volume. You resist silently, unnoticed, without anyone realizing you've already disengaged. The Stoics knew that real power isn't loud. It doesn't shout or demand attention. Epictetus once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." You walk into a situation that's overwhelming, like a storm brewing around you, but inside, you remain unaffected. You create a mental boundary, an invisible line that keeps the noise out. The world may think they're engaging with you, but your true self stays untouched, distant, like a shadow slipping through a crowd unnoticed. Imagine being in a crowded space. Voices chatter, phones ring, the noise presses against your ears. But you don't fight it. You let the noise exist while you choose not to let it affect you. Invisible resistance is your ability to stay present while remaining mentally detached. It's not avoidance, it's control. Others may see you as quiet or reserved, but inside, you are strategically conserving your energy, choosing where and when to engage. This resistance isn't about running away. It's about staying still in the middle of the chaos and refusing to let it pull you in. It's about maintaining your boundaries without anyone knowing they exist. You remain outwardly involved, yet internally detached. People may call it aloofness, but it's really self-preservation. You choose when to react and when to remain quiet. Over time, you'll notice the shift. The loud world no longer dictates your behavior. The more you master this invisible resistance, the more powerful you become. You stand like a mountain, unmoved by the winds of distraction. People won't know what has changed, but you will. The chaos will no longer reach you because you've learned the art of resisting it without a sound. Second, redefine strength as stillness. The world admires those who are loud, who push forward with force, but for introverts, strength has always looked different. Society may expect you to raise your voice to be noticed, but what if true power doesn't come from sound at all? What if the most formidable strength is found in the quietest places, within the stillness of your own mind? The Stoics knew this truth intimately. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled amid constant turmoil, wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." You walk into a room where conversations swirl around you. People push their opinions, desperate to be heard. You, however, remain still. At first glance, it might seem like passivity, but within, there is a strength building, quiet, unseen, but undeniable. You've tapped into a power that few understand. The more still you become, the more the chaos around you loses its grip. Imagine the noise of everyday life as a wave crashing onto the shore. Most people are caught up in the motion, tumbling with the currents, always reacting. But you stand still, anchored deep beneath the surface. The wave comes and goes, but it never moves you. This is what the Stoics meant by strength and stillness. It's not a lack of engagement. It's a deliberate choice to remain calm amid chaos. In a world that praises speed and action, stillness is an act of rebellion. It's understanding that true power doesn't need to rush. It doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard. It's not about matching the world's intensity, but finding your own pace and standing firm in it. When others panic, you remain collected. When people around you react impulsively, you respond with clarity and purpose. Over time, you'll realize that this stillness isn't just a coping mechanism, it's your greatest strength. The loudest voices may fill the room, but their noise won't shake you. Your calm presence will stand in contrast, and others will begin to notice. You may not seek the attention, but strength, real strength, never goes unnoticed for long. In the quiet, you've found your power, and that's more commanding than any shout. Third, make the world smaller. There are days when the world feels too vast, too noisy, too overwhelming. The endless stream of expectations, responsibilities, and information floods your mind until it feels like you're drowning. As an introvert, this barrage of external stimuli can leave you feeling trapped. The louder the world becomes, the more you long for space to breathe. The answer, however, isn't to run from it. The solution is far simpler. You make the world smaller. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once remarked, "Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes of them." What if the reason you feel overwhelmed isn't because the world is too big, but because you're letting too much in? To regain control, you shrink your world, not by retreating entirely, but by curating what enters your mind and your life. Start by picturing your mind as a house with many doors. Most of us leave these doors wide open, allowing every noise, every voice, every demand to rush in unfiltered. But you, as an introvert, can begin to close those doors one by one. Decide who and what gets your attention. Not every conversation needs your engagement. Not every problem requires your energy. By narrowing your focus, you make the world smaller and more manageable. This isn't about isolation or withdrawal. It's about choice. You choose whose opinions matter, what tasks deserve your effort, and which parts of the noisy world you allow into your inner circle. The more you refine this process, the more peace you find. Imagine being in a crowded space, hundreds of voices, sights, and sounds competing for your attention. But instead of being overwhelmed, you mentally shrink the scene. The noise fades into the background as you focus on just one thing. The chaos becomes a dull hum, no longer pressing in on you. You've made the world smaller. You control what enters your mental space, and in doing so, you've taken back your power. The world outside may remain noisy, but your world, the one you've intentionally crafted, becomes a sanctuary. And in that smaller, quieter space, you thrive. You no longer feel overwhelmed because you've learned the Stoic art of setting boundaries, of choosing what matters. The noise doesn't disappear, but now it's on the outside, and you, inside your curated world, are at peace. Fourth, turn solitude into armor. Solitude is often seen as something to escape from, a void to be filled with noise or company. But for an introvert, solitude isn't just a refuge. It's a form of armor, a place of preparation. The Stoics understood that being alone is not a weakness but a source of immense strength. As Seneca once said, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." In a world that constantly demands interaction, choosing solitude can feel like a rebellion. But it's in these moments of quiet that you build your resilience. Picture the introvert in the midst of a social gathering, feeling the weight of conversation pressing down. The need to engage feels overwhelming. Then, you step outside, into the cool night air. The silence wraps around you like a cloak, and suddenly, the world's demands no longer seem so pressing. This isn't about running away. It's about preparing yourself for the battles ahead. Solitude becomes your armor. Every moment you spend in stillness is a moment of sharpening your mind, of fortifying your spirit against the inevitable noise that awaits. When you return to the world, you do so stronger, more focused, and less affected by its chaos. Imagine solitude not as a retreat, but as a deliberate choice to recharge. In these quiet moments, you gather strength. You reflect, you plan, you prepare. The next time you face the noisy world, you're not depleted because you've built your resilience in the silence. The louder the world gets, the more powerful your solitude becomes. The Stoic introvert knows that solitude is not a place to hide, but a place to grow. It's where you strip away the distractions, confront your thoughts, and build your defenses. When the world comes knocking, You don't answer out of obligation. You decide when to engage and on your terms. Solitude gives you that power. It becomes your armor, not against people or noise, but against the energy that would otherwise drain you. And when you walk back into the world, you're ready. The noise won't consume you because you've built your strength in silence. Fifth, convert anxiety into focus. Anxiety. For many introverts, it's an unwelcome companion, a gnawing feeling of being overwhelmed by too much input from the world. The faster life moves, the louder it becomes, the more that anxious energy builds. But what if instead of fighting anxiety, you could turn it into your greatest tool? What if you could transform that chaotic energy into pure, undiluted focus? The Stoics were no strangers to anxiety. They lived in uncertain times, facing wars, plagues, and political unrest. Yet, they found ways to harness their inner turmoil. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This simple truth is your key. Anxiety comes not from the world outside, but from how you interpret it. And interpretation can be shifted. Imagine anxiety not as something to be feared, but as raw energy. It's like electricity, dangerous when uncontrolled, but immensely powerful when directed. When the world around you feels overwhelming, and your mind begins to spiral, you don't resist the feeling. Instead, you channel it. Focus your mind on a single task, a single thought. All that anxious energy, instead of pulling you in 100 directions, becomes laser-focused on one. Think of it like a river. Left unchecked, the water spills over, flooding everything in its path. But with the right channel, that water becomes a powerful force, driving mills or generating electricity. Your anxiety is the same. The more you try to suppress it, the more chaotic it becomes. But when you learn to channel it, it becomes a source of incredible focus and clarity. The next time the world presses in, and that familiar knot of anxiety forms, don't fight it. Acknowledge it and then direct it. Choose one task, one goal, and pour your energy into it. The noise of the world fades as your mind sharpens. Anxiety, once a foe, becomes an ally. Instead of being scattered, you become precise. The loud world doesn't drown you out. It sharpens your focus. Over time, this practice becomes second nature. You learn that anxiety isn't something to be feared, but something to be harnessed. The loud world keeps spinning, but you've turned its pressure into power. You've mastered the art of converting chaos into clarity. Sixth, own your silence. Silence can feel like both a gift and a curse. In a world that never stops talking, silence is often misunderstood as weakness, hesitation, or even fear. But as an introvert, silence is your strongest weapon, if you learn to own it. Too often, we feel pressure to fill the space with words, to match the world's noise, believing that silence makes us invisible. Yet, the Stoics understood that silence is not emptiness, it's power. As Seneca said, silence is a lesson learned through life's hardships. Picture yourself in a room full of people, voices clashing like waves in a storm. The instinct might be to raise your voice just to be heard, to prove your presence. But what if you didn't? What if instead, you embraced the silence, held onto it as your own? What if you used it to listen, observe, and understand more deeply than anyone else in the room? Owning your silence means you no longer view it as something to fix, but something to wield. In a conversation, when others rush to fill the void with words, you stay calm, deliberate. You speak only when necessary, and because of that, your words carry more weight. You're not competing to be heard. You're waiting for the right moment, and when it comes, people listen. The power isn't in the quantity of your speech, but in its timing and precision. But silence isn't just about conversations. It's about how you move through the world. When you own your silence, you stop reacting to every distraction. You no longer feel the need to justify yourself, to explain your quiet nature. The loud world doesn't dictate your actions or your energy. Instead, your silence becomes a space where you control the narrative, where you decide when to engage and when to simply observe. The key to owning your silence is to stop apologizing for it. Many people are uncomfortable with silence because they don't understand it, but you do. The world values noise because it fears the unknown, and silence represents that unknown. But for you, silence is clarity, focus, and power. It's where you recharge, reflect, and grow stronger. When you own your silence, you stop letting the world decide who you should be. You define yourself, not by how loudly you speak, but by how deeply you think. And in that silence, you find freedom. The world is loud, relentless, and demanding, but you no longer bend to its chaos. You've learned to stand still in the storm, finding strength in the quiet places where others are too afraid to look. Anxiety doesn't rule you, it's your focus now. You thrive in solitude, not because you're hiding, but because you've found your power in it. You've mastered the art of resistance, silence, and stillness. This journey is just beginning. Dive deeper into the Stoic mindset and unlock even more of your potential. Be sure to like, subscribe, and explore our next videos displayed on screen.